Hi, everybody. Welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 173 for October 6th, 2011. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Al Malentano.
And as you can tell if you're watching the video version, and likely here if you're listening to the audio version, we have a very different setup for our podcast tonight because
One that
of...
doesn't like me.
Yeah, because of the untimely death of Mr. Steve Jobs. The Twit Network is dedicating coverage to that this evening, so we kind of got pushed out, and rather than miss a week because we had a whole lot of stuff to talk about, we decided to try this nifty gadget called Google Hangout and record video from it.
Hey, you know what the best thing about Google Hangout is?
What was that?
Is
the remote
that,
mute button?
Well, no. If you yell loud enough, you could say something, Jeremy.
I keep saying
Subliminal
things,
messages!
and it still hasn't...
That's the kind of night it's going to be. Oh, Lord, help us all. Okay, so let's just jump into the goods. First off, there's one article that went up this week that by Matt Smith, a review of the MSI X370 notebook. This is a Fusion notebook, ultra-portable chassis according to his definition thereof. It does use the AMD E350 APU, Radeon HD 6310 integrated graphics, 4 gigs of memory. It has a 500 gig hard drive, which is kind of nice, but it's got a 13.4-inch screen, which kind of, I don't know if I'd consider that an ultra-portable then, but it does only weigh 3.8 pounds with an 8-cell battery, so that's kind of interesting there. He seemed to actually like it. If we go back there towards the performance and conclusion page, you will see that it performs kind of where you would expect something based on the E350 to perform. Not spectacularly, but better than the Atom, and definitely better graphics compression and gaming, or graphics performance and gaming performance than the Atom processors, without a doubt. And it actually did get a PC Perspective Gold award. So if you're looking for a machine, $500 range, go check out this review of the MSI X370. Now, on to bigger, better things. We had a lot of we talked about this quite a bit last week, if I'm not mistaken. Battlefield 3, right? I put together a little system guide here, and I was curious, Jeremy, I kind of stole a lot of your suggestions from the hardware leaderboard. I'd seen it only made sense, kind of use those as a basis for a comparison to what we used here.
And boy, did the comments section like that.
Yeah, so it was a different type of guide. With the hardware leaderboard, we kind of base it on price. Here's a system for $500, $1,000, $1,500, and then the Dream system.
The Dream system is really, pegged for gaming only, or if you're going to be a crazy video renderer. But for the other ones, it's more of a general purpose, computer. You're going to be doing email on it. You're going to be doing photos on it. You're going to want to play, Farmville, but you're not really going to be gaming on some of them. For this, we had to absolutely go for, this is what you're buying if you want to play Battlefield 3 and you want it to look pretty.
Agreed. We kind of set up 3 parameters: a medium, a high, and an ultra configuration. The medium configuration was 1680 by 1050 with kind of the Battlefield 3 in-game settings of medium. The all-high setting was resolution 1920 by 1080 with the in-game settings of high, and then the ultra configuration, in-game settings of ultra, resolution of 2560 by 1600, or triple 1080p panels, those types of things. So we basically took, the week or so of testing that we had in Battlefield 3. We did the live stream, which was actually a lot of success, had a lot of people enjoy that, and we kind of summed it up in a few pages. And if you want to play at 1080p, here's the setting for you. If you want to play at 1680 by 1050, here's the configuration for you. And if you want to play on a 30-inch panel and ultra settings, here's what you need. I think probably the one that most people will be interested in is the 1920 by 1080p high settings, right? It's kind of not really a middle ground necessarily, but it kind of covers all your bases. And, with the base components, which we're talking about, just the CPU, the motherboard, the memory, and the GPU, right? So your power supply, your storage, those aren't really going to matter a whole lot for this particular game, despite that Alan may wish that it were the other way around. Sorry, that's just the way it is. Core i5 2500, $220 processor. MSI's Z68 motherboard, $189. 8 gigabytes of Corsair Vengeance DDR3 memory, $47, which is ridiculously cheap, I might add. And then, you know, Josh, I'll be kind of curious on your thoughts here on the GPU. You know, Battlefield 3, pretty taxing game. I ended up picking the MSI-R, the Lightning version, the 2 gigabyte overclocked Radeon 6970 graphics card. That's
Correct.
and overall impressions, good card. How far was it overclocked, I think? I'm trying to see here.
It was about 60 to 80 megahertz, I think, over stock.
Okay. What really did it for me, because what's interesting is you compare the 6970 to the GTX 580. Those are the top-end single graphics cards from either company. The problem is the 580 is anywhere from $60 to $100 more than the 6970, depending on whichever configuration you're going to get. So in our case, I actually chose an overclocked 6970 with an upgraded cooler from MSI. That's $386, and then the GTX 580 I chose was $469. So even though the GTX 580 is a faster card, it's a better performer, I think the 6970 is going to be able to get you that 1080p resolution at high settings for less money than the GTX 580. Although either of those will work. So
Yeah, it's about $150, isn't it?
what's that?
So it's around the neighborhood of $150 extra.
Well, in our configuration, it was about $80, $60 to $80, because I went with overclock cards in both configurations.
Fair enough.
Now, at the 1680 by 1050 res, what was interesting there was, I don't know if this was a card that you had actually put in the leaderboard, the Zotac Amp GTX 560 overclocked?
Yeah, it was just a really, really sweet deal as
Still
when
is.
it came out. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there are some drawbacks to it, and, you know, you are missing some shader units, but frankly, you know, dollar per frames per second, it's obnoxiously good at medium resolution. Don't expect this thing to do, you know...
You were always opening something.
I can't help it.
It'll never do a 30-inch monitor.
No.
1080p, it's got enough memory.
$220 for this card. Here's why it's impressive, and I chose it over a kind of reference clock GTX 560 Ti is about the same price, $220 reference speed. It has more shader units but runs at a lower clock speed. The GTX 560, which is a 1 gigabyte frame buffer card but still has less shader units, runs at 950 megahertz that's 140 megahertz higher than the base speed of 810 megahertz. So that's a huge overclock in terms of percentage. And if you look at the regular 560s, you're only paying about $20 more. I figured that was well worth, you know, the overclocking, the built-in overclocking capability of that card, well worth that $20 price difference. And then if we look at the 2560 by 1600 one, this is, you know, this one requires, which is kind of unfortunate, if you want to run it at ultra settings, you're looking at I chose the MSI 580, GTX 580 Lightnings, 1.5 gigabyte version as opposed to the 3 gigabyte version just because of the price difference. Or you could go with a pair of the 6970s, and this time I kind of looked at the Asus one. It was a little bit less expensive, but not too bad there. Looks like we lost somebody. Okay, Jeremy came back.
Jeremy. You know, something to consider...
The main video died on me, so...
Well, it should, because look at your ugly mug. But something to consider with... No, thanks. Stop interrupting me with these subliminal messages. But anyway, something to consider here is that BF3 takes up a ton of texture and video memory. Apparently, people who are running in you know, either Eyefinity or the NVIDIA Surround, they're looking at 2.3 gigs to 2.5 gigs of actual memory. Now, if you think of a GTX 580, it's got 1.5 gigs in these dual kind of, you know, Crossfire and SLI. They don't double up the memory, so you've still got 1.5 gigs of memory still there. So if you use modern titles, you need to have as much memory as possible on a single card. So 2 to 3 gigs is really what they're aiming at, and it's going to be interesting to see when the final product comes out where we actually stand with multi-monitor gaming.
That's actually, and it even comes more into play when we talk about Rage a little bit later, that whole frame buffer issue in particular. A couple of other quick things on Battlefield 3. We did actually during our live stream when we got into group. It was actually a whole lot of fun. Jeremy, you didn't make it on. Josh, I don't think you made it on. Ken was playing. Steve was playing. None of you guys actually made it on, but we actually got onto a Caspian Border server at one point, which was password locked. We kind of accidentally gave out the password on the live stream and told people how to jump on. And then, ironically, a day later, they closed all the Caspian Border servers. But we did actually get to test performance on that, and that's actually a little bit more towards Josh's point. This is the 64-player map. This is the one that's a much larger open world. Definitely has the capability to use more of that frame buffer from the graphics card, and you can see that in our scaling where we looked at how much more strenuous the Caspian map was over the Metro map, even on the same outdoor scenes. And you can watch a little video there as well of me playing very poorly in Battlefield 3. It's a 64-player map, as you can see.
Par for the course.
Yeah. The password. Yeah. What's the password? Yeah, it definitely is. And then finally, I did take a look at SLI performance. We had some requests for SLI performance, in particular of the GTX 460. It was a very, very popular video card. We had a lot of people asking about results for the GTX 460, and in particular, they knew it wasn't going to get the performance they wanted out of Battlefield 3. What if they added in a second one? And so we took a look at what scaling like that would be. And if we scroll down here on my page, you'll see that, in fact, we got scaling rates of 60% at medium, ultra quality settings. I'm sorry, we saw about 60%, but at high quality settings, we saw a rate increase of 84%. In SLI. We went from a single GTX 460 getting you about 33 frames per second to a pair of them getting you 62 frames per second. So that's actually a huge difference. And if you can find another 460, I think they might be $200, maybe $180 or something at this point, relatively low in terms of cost. That's your best bet. If you have a single 560, maybe it's time for you to upgrade to a second one of those if you want to really play at high settings or on a larger, 2560 by 1600 or 2560 by 1440 monitor. We had a lot of fun with Battlefield 3 this week, and I think, I don't know, Josh, did you get a chance to play any of it at all?
I didn't, which is kind of sad because I've been playing Battlefield 42 and BF2 and all these others, and I just didn't get a chance to do it. Maybe I was afraid of Origin. I was scared.
Nah, it's not really that bad. It's not that big of a deal. You've got until October 10th still to give it a shot. Free open beta download. So, Jeremy, did you try it out?
I still meaning to. First, Origin. I downloaded Origin, and it refused my password. And I finally got upset and just said screw it and went and played Deus Ex 3.
Did you have a special character in your password?
Yes, I do. Because, that's a space. Hey, it helps when you're trying to crack passwords if it's multiple words. But apparently that's disallowed. So I got annoyed and left. Came back another day, finally, okay, fine, I'll pick a password that'll fit. Oh, I'm not allowed to download the Battlefield 2 or 3 demo because Origin's having issues. And that carried on for the next 3 days until finally last night I decided to do it again. And then it whined because I hadn't updated my AMD Catalyst.
But it will still let you play. It does tell you that if you're not using 11.9 or later, that you should update. But if you hit OK, it still lets you play, because that's what I do on my PC at home, because I was too lazy to upgrade past 11.6 or whatever I actually had.
No, I sat there staring for about 2 minutes before I finally said, you know what, forget it. But I did download a new driver. I might update it after the show and actually give it a shot.
You guys should definitely try it.
Well, I'm a big fan of the Battlefield series too.
Alan has did you try Battlefield 3?
What was that?
Did you try Battlefield 3 at all?
I have had
He was too busy with the strippers in Vegas.
No play.
Yeah,
no.
I understand.
Yeah, right.
Issue. Well, I liked it. Ken thought it was a lot of fun. Steve liked it. We had a lot of podcast listeners and Twitch viewers and all that kind of stuff actually play with us. It was actually really, really cool. And hopefully we'll be able to set some more of that stuff up in the near future. Maybe we'll do it one more time before the beta actually ends on the 10th, although we won't be able to get into the Caspian servers, obviously.
And you bought a server anyway, so we'll be able to do it once the real one comes out.
When it actually comes out October 25th, it's only 20 days away, less than 3 weeks. We have a PC perspective, paid for, branded, 64-player server, so we'll be able to have lots of interesting matches on that.
I guess I need to start standing out at the corner and selling my services to be able to afford the game when it comes out.
Yep.
It's going to be $5,000.
$5,000. That's a lot of standing on the corner.
Especially for you. Let's
$5 a pop.
Let's take a quick break. We're going to thank today's podcast sponsor, and we'll get back and we'll talk a little bit about id Software's Rage and whether or not you should be angry.
Rage!
All right. Thank you, MSI, for that. Now we are, in fact, going to talk about Rage. This game is not a beta. It was actually released on Tuesday.
Wait. Go back.
You're sure about that?
You sure?
This game,
sure it's not a beta?
This game was not supposed to be a beta. It was released on Steam Monday night at midnight Tuesday, and it had a lot of issues, actually. So let me go over my evaluation of it in terms of performance, and then we'll get into some of the image quality issues and all the bugs and crap that have been going around. So first off, if you look on PC Perspective, you'll see Rage performance and image quality evaluation. Similar, it's supposed to be in a similar fashion what we did with Battlefield 3. The first complication was benchmarking the game is very, very difficult. It has a 60 frame per second hard lock, essentially, on the frame rate. And what's even more kind of a pain in the ass is that it will run at 60. You don't have any image quality settings, right? So if I can scroll down here a little bit on our page, you'll see what is the I don't think I can zoom in.
Bang, you're dead. Sorry, you had to do the settings in game.
So,
oh wait, that was Battlefield 3.
Yeah, so if we look at our image quality options here, they are resolution, display mode, like full screen or in a window, anti-aliasing goes from none to 4.8x, brightness, and something called GPU transcode, which I'll explain a little bit. That's all you get. Those are all the options in the menu that you get. And the reason id Software says this is like that is because they change everything in the background, right? They want to hit that 60 frames per second mark. That's what they've decided is their goal. They don't want you to decide that you can play at a 30 or 40 frames per second mark. They want you to be at 60. And so what they do is they attempt to adjust the image quality based on the performance to getting you to 60 frames per second. It doesn't really work very well yet, day one, to be pretty. I tested GTX 560 Ti, GTX 580, GTX 460, a 6850, 6950, 6970, and here is the resulting frame rate, 60 frames per second. So it kind of makes benchmarking pretty useless at this point. My alternative was, okay, everything runs at 60 frames per second. Let's see how the image quality looks. Maybe there's an actual image quality difference when I play on the 580 than when I play on the 560 Ti. And nope, that's not the case either. If we look here, image quality looks the same on a 580 and a 560. Somebody who has seen developer builds of Rage told me that the dirty little secret is you don't need anything more than like a GTX 560 to get the top image quality at 100-something frames per second. And this was a development build where you used to be able to disable the 60 frame per second lock. So this is not a graphics card killer. I don't, Josh, you might remember better than I. Doom 3, when it was released, was it a graphics card killer, or was it kind of, media,
Oh, no, it could be. There was that level with the giants and the skulls protecting him, which annihilated quite a few graphics cards.
Okay.
It was still a beefy program as compared to like Half-Life 2. Half-Life 2, at the same time that it came out a couple of months before, it was good-looking game, but it didn't destroy video cards. But you could get up to higher quality levels and anti-aliasing and resolution, and you could slow down quite a few. I mean, it wasn't Crysis. Mm-hmm. But it was still kind of a step above. It was a higher bar at the time.
Okay. So lots of rage actually looks good. Lots of rage looks really bad. If you go to my performance and image quality article and you look at the second page, you will see the very first screenshot we show is me holding a pistol overlooking kind of this opening area. And when you first glance at it, you go, okay, some of that looks okay, some of it not so much. And if you zoom in on some stuff, like, I don't know, say the gun, it looks pretty good. It looks a little bit cartoonish almost, kind of, what's the Valve team-based, Team Fortress-y kind of almost, maybe Borderlands style. But then if
cartoonish?
Yeah, it's kind of got like heavy
cell shaders?
Kind of. But if you scroll down a little bit and you look at the next zoomed-in photo, and you look at like an overhang, and you look at the textures on the overhang, they're just awful. Like they just look bad. They look like something from many, many years ago. And the same thing happens in multiple locations. You know, you get a full screen shot, you zoom in on a place that has a pretty high level of detail, and you're great. You scroll down and you look at this pipe that's actually really close to you, and it looks like something out of Quake 3. It honestly does. And in my opinion, this can be nothing other than the artists and the designers of the game had to make decisions and trade-offs for this mega texture technology in order to fit it into the appropriate memory spaces of a video card and also a console. And so because
and a phone.
Well, no, they didn't use this exact. They didn't actually
slightly modified, but still, they're trying to play it on every single device on the planet.
The whole goal of it was the scalability.
Yeah.
So working with some people at NVIDIA and AMD, trying to play around, what can we do to improve the image quality here? You know, there were some settings, VT, which is the virtual texture engine inside Rage. You could adjust some of those settings through the console. Page image size unique. Set it to 8K instead of 4K, and you get some improvements. And there were improvements, but there are some places where it's not going to look any better because the texture detail is not there. You know, NVIDIA, trust me, NVIDIA is working hard on this because they want the game to look good. They want to sell copies of the game. They want to sell graphics cards. So that's an issue. But then I think the biggest issue that Rage has had is the whole texture pop-up. And this is bad. If you look at the third page of our screen of our article, the first image you see is a screenshot from video that we recorded on our test system through Fraps and through HDMI, captured directly. And you'll see what happens is if you have the camera and you quickly turn to the left or quickly turn to the right, not even like on purpose, like if you're just turning around because that's what you do in a game, what you will see is very poorly detailed textures that will then sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly come into focus, come into a detail level that actually looks good. And we actually posted a video of some of these issues. I don't know, we're going to try to show some of this on the video for us. Again, this is our first time using Google Hangout. I guess I could have used YouTube. We could have watched this together, guys. But that's not what we're going to do.
Could we have?
We could have, but we're not going to.
That's so what I wanted to do.
I know. So what was also interesting here, and we can get some input from Alan on this, is it appears that the issue exists without a doubt. If you're recording the game with Fraps, it actually happens more. I guess it's a much poorer effect. Like it takes longer for the textures to load.
Damn you, Heisenberg!
If you're using HDMI to capture it.
That makes sense, actually.
Okay.
Because Fraps is, the game is not putting all the textures in the video memory right off the bat. They can't all fit, right?
Correct.
So Fraps is pulling frames from the frame buffer. Well, now you're using up bandwidth, and there's extra overhead there with what the game is trying to push those textures up to the video card on the fly. Mm-hmm. So, be it if it's a CPU load issue maybe, or if it's just something that has to do with the video card on the game itself, right? There's, we don't know which one it might be.
Yeah, it's so. My guess is it's a combination of both I/O and CPU load because recording
1080p.
native, 1080p video in Fraps is very CPU intensive because it does it all in real time, and that's why when you look at our HDMI footage in this video, and again, if you're watching this on the not on the live stream, we're not doing one, but if you're watching this in the podcast video, I very much encourage everybody to go to the article and watch the YouTube video do it in 1080p, let it load up all the way. And you can tell in the HDMI captured version, you still see something on the sides of the screen. You still see something on the edges of the screen, but it goes away much quicker, almost to the point where you might think it was part of a motion blur effect or something like that. And if you didn't slow it down, you might not see it. But it's all very dependent on each person's individual system.
I can say that at QuakeCon, I did not notice it at all.
Okay.
And then on that video, which was Fraps, I did notice it like immediately. So, yeah, hopefully most of
Now, I
it's
wonder
because
if
of
you
Fraps.
had watched the HDMI video first, if you would have noticed it right away, because
I
the
don't know.
Fraps video it is very obvious, and but with the HDMI video, it is much less obvious.
Mhm.
So. It's an interesting kind of dilemma. Bethesda has said they're trying to work on it. id Software has said they're trying to work on it. That's a silly looking picture of John Carmack on our video icon. But, probably to the chagrin of their PR department, John Carmack is very forthcoming about this is a possibility of this happening. He gave the recipe to break the game. He said, you really want to make the game look as bad as possible? Walk backwards into a town that you've never been in before, right? And then turn around all of a sudden and watch all the stuff kind of come into focus, right? But that's not how people play the game for the most part, right? So it probably won't be that big of an issue. If you go to the Steam forums,
Is this a good, a good patient for your new way of benchmarking games? Because you are looking at doing a completely different way, not looking at frames per second, but actually looking at, micro stuttering and little tiny tears.
This game won't do that, right? Because this game's locked at 60,
So it's not
going to be
gonna
that
do it at
good.
all.
Well, no, I mean it'll do that, but it'll do it for very short periods of time before the engine starts cutting down quality levels to get it back up to 60.
Yeah.
So unless you can quantitatively say this scene looks crappier at the 60 frames per second than the one at a higher video card, here, look at this Photoshop.
Right.
Doubling back and forth. See this nice flash thing that goes back? Yeah, it's going to be a pain in the ass.
So that's the issue with this game is that, I kind of like their idea. They're saying, hey, we want you to have this kind of experience, a 60 frames per second experience, and we want to adjust the quality based on your hardware. The issue is that doesn't work. If you've ever tried a Valve game where they have the auto settings and that types of things, it never really works out the way that you would think it could. New drivers come out and drastically affect things, and the game doesn't get updated as often as drivers. id Software may end up being better than that because they have to be for this particular title, but in the past it's never been the issue. There are other issues with Rage. The mouse acceleration is awful. Like when you go from, when you're in the shooter parts and you're, wandering around, it works great. When you go into the menus, all of a sudden the mouse is like 1,000,000 miles an hour. And it's kind of little annoying things like that make you think, did they even look at this stuff, really? I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Press start button to continue.
Yeah, I knew you were. Yeah. There's definitely the press start button at the beginning of the console game, and I know that's so easy to fix. And if you're a PC-based company, or you were a PC-based company for decades, that's going to piss people off. Why do you bother? Why do you not do that?
Well, they'll put out a patch that'll let you break it, essentially.
Hey, Alan, do me a favor. Put your ear cup over your ear.
Okay, what does that sound like?
Let me try something.
No, I still hear feedback.
Yeah, I'm still hearing somebody echo out. That's why I'm confused.
Anyway.
But no, I'm sure they'll put out a patch that'll let you break Rage, essentially, so that you can, as a PC gamer, just crank up minimum frame rates to whatever. And I think that's the first time you'll see an editable minimum frame rates in an INI file, which should be interesting.
You know what I think the issue, not with Rage, but Google+, going on a segue, is if multiple people are talking or breathing heavily at the same time, we get that echo effect.
Is that what that is, you think?
I think so, because everything, including your video, just cleared up, except your Acme.
Yeah.
There
it goes again.
I'm hitting mute mic every time I'm not talking, just to make sure.
So am I.
All right.
Thank
Well, we will.
goodness.
Again, this is all learning process. We will figure this all out. Let's move away from Battlefield 3 and Rage. Talk a little bit about some other news that came out. One, panel self-refresh. We saw this at IDF. Actually, I saw it. They demoed it at IDF. Correct me if I go off.
You're wrong.
Correct me if I'm wrong on anything here, Jeremy. But the idea of this is that the LCD panel now has hardware in it, like a frame buffer. And so rather than get a new frame every 16th of a second, or every 60th of a second, every 16 milliseconds from a graphics card, from a GPU, getting that, refreshing it. What it does instead is it only takes stuff that has changed. Otherwise, it remains static on the screen, thereby saving us power and endless hours of battery life.
Well, I don't know about endless. They're claiming something about 85% less power consumption, but that's 85% less of the GPU. So don't expect your battery life to suddenly rocket by 85%. But on the other hand, it's a great thing. You're looking at a PDF, and you're staring at it, and you're reading it, and trying to figure it out, or you're looking at an email. Why is it being refreshed 60 times a second?
Yeah. That's true. So it's interesting. What actually powers off is the frame buffer on the GPU, not...
No, it is the other way.
Okay.
So the frame buffer stays active. The GPU itself goes to sleep. At least for a little bit.
Okay, you know what's kind of interesting about this? The other night, I was laying in bed. You don't want to know any of the details, but
there's
a remote
mute button.
Yeah, I was laying in bed, and I was thinking, how could we get past this whole 60 frames, 120 frames, 240 frames per second? Well, essentially, we could go with kind of more of an analog change in how we do displays.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be each, pixel only really refreshes when it actually changes. Now, this would use a little bit more driver overhead. However, it would totally decrease overall capacity because, how often do you truly, do 360 degrees on your mouse and change the scene when only, X amount of pixels, per scene, per frame are going to be changed. So I think that this is one of the areas that is not only going to be power saving, but we're going to see this probably implemented in around 5 years with, the graphics card makers, that there are going to be areas that just will not change very much, and especially when we're talking about the 60 or 120 frames per second, certainly if you're moving constantly, but you're not always doing that. And this is going to be another jump that we are going to see that is more of an analog thing. I mean, think of it this way. Think of a screen in front of you that has light, diodes kind of on the back that, do a picture of what's going on behind there, and you pass your hand behind that. So you see your hand across the screen, but of course, everything else that, the wall, the picture on the frame, your Betty Grable nudies, everything else all stays the same. So, I mean, this is probably something that we're going to see a lot more of, and it's actually a really interesting area because we as humans are kind of analog, and I think that we're going to see a lot more of digital going towards, more analog representations of our worldview. So it's kind of a neat concept that I didn't know was going on because in my mind I'm 2 years ahead. Behind, 2 years behind the engineers who are actually working on this stuff. So I'm unhirable, except by you, Ryan. Thank you.
Because I'm 2 years behind as well.
Yeah.
That does bring to mind the StarCraft 2 problem, where some people with high-end video cards were nuking themselves, or at least reportedly nuking themselves, on the still scenes, because there was no limit on the refresh. So you're talking to somebody, the entire background is being refreshed as fast as the bloody video card can go, and, it's causing significant heat. Guess what? Into the frame buffer you go, no refresh.
All right, next story. We've got a couple of discussions we're going to have here now about Bulldozer. According to, this was kind of interesting, we got forwarded a leak from a Micro Center employee of some kind.
Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anybody. Micro Center. Apparently, Micro Center's corporate sent out a notice to all their employees that said AMD is launching their new AM3 Plus FX series processors on October 12th, 2011. We currently have a number of AM3 Plus compatible motherboards in stock. These motherboards will support the new AM3 Plus FX processors as well as legacy AM3 processors. So if there was a doubt about when Bulldozer was going to be released, this pretty much puts it in stone if you believe the Micro Center release. I don't know. Any other comments on that, Josh, or anything?
Sure, it sounds like a good rumor to listen to.
Well, now, what about, did you look at the leaked Bulldozer benchmarks? Kind of, this came out the day or two after.
Yeah. Dinamen Haber, the Turkish site that has apparently a main line from Austin.
Or is allowed to get away with it?
Yeah. Apparently, some of the DMRCA or whatever the hell they call those laws.
I can tell you for a fact that these slides, I saw when I was in Austin last month, and that upsets me.
Don't you love it when your thunder is stolen from you? You should become like Zeus, which is kind of interesting because Greece is right next to Turkey, and they have a long-standing issue.
Anyway, let's talk about the benchmarks.
Yeah, it shows that it is at least above a 2500K from Intel, the i5 2500K. It keeps up in quite a few things with the i7 2600K, but it falls behind in a few things. So this at least puts AMD more on a level with Intel, because if you really look at it, if you look back at the reviews of like the 990X, the i7 990X, it was barely keeping ahead of the i7 2600K. I mean, the Sandy Bridge architecture is just really good. And so if AMD can at least match that, even though they've got about 300 megahertz faster core than the i7 2600K, mm-hmm. I mean, they're still keeping up there. They're still pulling about the same amount of power. And so if they could keep this performance within that window, then it's a really solid win for AMD. I mean, certainly next year, next April or May or so, we'll see the Ivy Bridge with 22 nanometer refresh from Intel, and certainly AMD will have a hard time keeping up with that. But then they do have a refresh of their 32 nanometer architecture in the Pile driver, which promises about another 10% of performance per clock with that product. But for now, I think the rumor is that the initial products will be around $250 for the high-end part, which is very affordable for most people. A lot of people are really looking forward to the 6-core part, or rather 3-module part, whatever you want to talk about it as.
Yeah.
For around $180. I mean, these are going to be pretty good processors for the price, and it's going to keep AMD in the game. So that's good for us as consumers.
What interests me is the benchmark that they're showing, the FX platform versus Intel i7 and the HD gaming 1920 by 1080p. They're comparing the AMD FX 8150, which I'm assuming is the highest end FX part, versus the Core i7 980X, which is a circa $1,000 CPU. And their goal here is the $800 you get in processor, or the $800 extra you have to pay for your processor and motherboard combination, maybe your memory combination as well, doesn't gain you anything in 1080p performance, right? They're kind of showing you here that across the board with the same graphics card, 1080p gaming is unchanged. This is not a surprise to anybody that listens to this podcast. It's not a surprise to anybody who reads PC Perspective, although I guess to some people they need this reiterated to them. This is why we still recommend AMD, Phenom 2 processors for gaming. You got a Phenom 2 X6 for gaming? Sure, fine, whatever. It's going to run fine. Hardly any games are CPU bottlenecked, and even if they are, it's a very minimal bottleneck. Most of it is still in the GPU. So yeah, we will know, obviously, presumably on August 12th now, whether or not all these benchmarks come to pass. So, Jeremy, what do you know about NVIDIA's upcoming 600 series of GPUs? We've heard rumors that they're going to be leading with the kind of smaller, lower parts. Is that going to be definitely the case now?
It seems to be, and boy, am I running out of pictures of Kepler to show. It's the GK107, which is going to be the 610M and the GT630M. These are going to be both be mobile chips. You are not going to see the Fermi that you wanted to see, the big old G700 GK100 anytime soon. These ones are scheduled for 2012. That's about the time that you're going to see them hit the market. And it's going to be an interesting market for them because they're leading with, you know, the left foot. They're leading with the middle chips, which AMD and Intel have done, you know, the past generations with no problem. NVIDIA is trying to sell a graphics card that's going to be competing directly against the APUs that both Intel and AMD are putting out. So now all of a sudden you have to justify the cost of buying a CPU and a discrete video card for your mobile platform, as opposed to just sticking with something that, hey, already has built-in Crossfire SLI if you choose a discrete card that's the same as the chip you bought. So it doesn't quite make sense to me why it is that NVIDIA is going with the mobile chips first, except for, you know, the long-standing saga of the issues that they've been having with, you know, not just heat like we're used to with Fermi, but even the process. Like, we're not convinced that the chips that they want to sell are actually going to be ready when they want to sell them. I
do want to point out that in your photo here of Kepler, I do believe that I thought those were chopsticks and not a compass.
How long's it been since you've seen a compass?
It's actually been probably a really long time.
Do you actually know what a slide rule is?
I know what one is. I've seen it in the movie Apollo 13.
Good.
I know what a slide rule is. Interesting. Okay, let's talk to Josh here. A quick little preview, if we will, of the ASUS HD 6770 Direct CU, which I believe is
Direct CU Silent.
Is that copper? Is that?
You know, it's got a copper plate that's nickel plated. If that makes any sense to you. But anyway, they're releasing a product, and it's called the HD 6770 Direct CU Silent, and it's silent because it has no stinking fan on it. It's a 0 decibel cooling system. So if you look here, this thing that's, you know, totally cutting out my screen, this is the card. Now it kind of looks big.
Is way bigger than the PCB.
Okay, well, let's take a look at the PCB.
Wow.
Yeah, that's rather large. And just to give you an impression of the size, here is a GTX. You're all happy I didn't whip that one out, but this is a GTX 280, I believe, and so it's you know, a pretty sizable card for the time, and we can see how much bigger this silent cooler is over even just a large card for the high end. Otherwise, I've been told that it should stay around 25C at full load.
Wow.
When you have at least one, case fan aimed kind of at it, and most people have one or two case fans that are at the front of their case, kind of aiming towards this card, so it's got a significant amount of airflow and usually a decently cooled case. So people who have no case fans, this is going to become a nuclear reactor.
Actually, well, the worst mistake they made designing that thing was they had to put that pretty shroud thing over it. right?
The pretty Ryan shroud.
They had to put the pretty little, dressing, whatever, Asus brand, little red and black thing. If that was off of there, you would probably get 3 times the airflow across that sucker because it's covering all of the heatsink area.
Yeah, but if you think about it, a fan that is going to the front of the case is coming this way, so it actually tunnels a lot of the air through this area, but still allows plenty of breathing.
Oh, I'm with you. It's just only if the air is going that way, right? If you have airflow
Only
going,
if.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Is it heavy?
No, it's actually fairly light. I mean, this GTX 280 is significantly heavier. These are all aluminum fins. They're not actually very tightly spaced. There's a pretty good gap between them. We've got 4 super pipes, even though it's not MSI. They're still pretty super. And the HD 6770 is not a new chip. It's based, it is an HD 5770, just been rebranded, and I mean they don't pull a lot of power. They don't exude a lot of heat, unlike our intern Ken.
Whoa,
Let's not go there. I mean,
so you're working on a review of that.
This, as well as a bunch of other AMD and NVIDIA graphics products, that there's a large stack of boxes from ASUS.
Well, as soon as this is
behind
over,
me.
I expect you to be working.
Yeah, no kidding. So does my wife.
Okay, last little news story here. Let's talk to Alan about the OCZ technology, which is like the Twitters, acquiring UK design team from PLX Technology. They are not acquiring all of PLX Technology. They're just acquiring a team from them.
Yeah, just their UK design branch, which
Yeah, that's how I understand it as well.
Yeah, so which is significant when you think about the Revo drives, the Z Drive R4, all those other releases that have been coming out lately. The key to those guys is that bridge chip and the fact that it could speak over so many lanes of PCI Express 2.0, and that's what a lot of that team, that other team, is working with. So I didn't see, I sort of browsed through their website real quick, and I didn't see anything specific that carries directly over to what OCZ is doing right now. But those guys have that kind of, that kind of technology and that kind of capability. If they're already producing chips that are talking to the PCI Express, and doing like 10 gigabits per second and stuff like that. So yeah, that's definitely where that's going. I don't know how long it's going to take before we see something from that, but it's definitely promising news for the time being.
All right. Due to the complications and rush of setting up this podcast, we didn't have any emails or anything to really go over, but we are going to get into some hardware software picks of the week, starting with myself. I don't really have a specific hardware or specific software, but I have a combination of the two. And when you combine hardware and software, everybody knows that you get a gaming event.
Baby.
GeForce LAN 6, October 14th, 15th, and 16th on the aircraft carrier USS Hornet, Alameda, California. That's in the Oakland, San Francisco Bay Area, if you didn't know. There are apparently, as of today, a last limited batch of LEET and BYOC seats available for sale. They will go on sale 9 p.m. Pacific on Thursday. So but if you're listening to this on Thursday, you have until 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, to get in line to buy up the last couple of spots. Why am I recommending this event? Not because I think you should go to a GeForce LAN event, but because I'm going to be there actually hosting another sort of kind of hardware workshop at the event. So I need everybody who is a podcast listener, a Twitch listener, a fan of the site to come out, show some support at the event. Maybe I want to do more of these in the future, and we got to have people in attendance who want to learn cool things and see cool demos and get a lot of free prizes and stuff like that. If you went to the QuakeCon workshop, you know what this is like. If you watch the QuakeCon workshop video that we posted, you have an idea what this is like, but you have no idea what this is like until you're there in person. Am I right, guys? Am I right?
You have no idea.
None idea. The workshop's going to be on Saturday, I believe, at 1 or 2 p.m. I'm not exactly sure what's on the schedule yet, I hope that doesn't mean they kicked me out, but I don't think that's what that means. We'll see. So that is my pick. Visit me, GeForce Land. This will be the last podcast I record before it. So I wanted to make sure I get that plug in there now. Go to, what is the URL here? GeForce. You go to GeForce.com or just Google GeForce Land, and you'll find it, GeForce Land 6. Next.
You would be amazed at the wonderful things that Research in Motion has been coming out with lately. They're just absolutely beautiful. And I'm not saying this because, you know, Canada's federal pension plan has a whole bunch of stocks in RIM, or that, you know, most of the private pension funds have stocks in RIM. I'm just saying, you know, if you've got an immense amount of money and you're looking for some innovators that can convince business people that this thing is actually great, buy RIM, please. I'm begging you.
Do you own stock in the company?
My pension plan does.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Josh.
Me. You know, I chose the Antec water cooling 620 system. It's actually really quite nice. It's only $59. Cool CPUs really nicely. It's quiet. I mean, if you want to go into simple basic water cooling, this is a nice product to have. Have I said nice enough? It's nice.
It's nice.
Yeah, it's like Ryan's wife. She's nice.
I don't like the name Cooler, Kuhler, with the U with the little dots over it.
It's Russian.
We should see that in HTML.
I think it's Swedish or something, isn't it?
Umlaut.
Either way, I'm not a fan.
Das ist Cooler, ja. Das ist sehr Cooler.
Yeah.
Do not like. All right, Alan, last but not least.
So I'm definitely going to order one of these. I didn't realize they were so easily available. They're kind of hard to look for, though, because you have to know what keywords to search for. So pretty much anybody with any kind of a modern, recent laptop or PC has an eSATA port out the back that they probably are not using. You know, it's that thing that branches off of whatever that other controller is on your motherboard or whatnot. But chances are you've got at least one of those things somewhere on your system. And it goes pretty darn fast. And USB 3 isn't catching on super fast as far as just simple little adapters to go from, say, USB to, you know, to whatever your hard drive may be. So, I mean, and I made this pick a while back. There was, you know, I have a USB 2 to
I like those.
serial ATA, a little adapter thing, right? But the USB 3 ones, they're few and far between so far. So something much simpler and much cheaper is if you search for power over eSATA to 22-pin may or may not be in the name, SATA cable, like adapter cable or just cable. Sort of Google some different things. We'll put a link in the show notes for one that I found. But these things go for like $5 or $6 because
this website you linked me to only lets you buy 20 minimum.
Oh, okay. Well, then, you know, use that as your basis and then find something that's equivalent. Yeah, but I've seen them for like $8 or $9 just for the singles. I know some of the other searches I did today where it was like $8 or $9. But there's no, you know, there's no logic to it. All it is just power over eSATA, and the power pins on one side of the eSATA port just go straight to the power pins of the, you know, serial ATA, and then the data just bridges right over to the data on the serial ATA. So it's a simple thing to make. And if you have one of those, it's just painless to, you know, you're just plugging in whatever you need. I don't know if I would trust it. Like, I don't know if motherboards can power like a full-blown 3.5-inch spinning disk. Like, especially if it's 7200 RPM, that might be a little too much for your motherboard to push. But anything 2.5-inch form factor, maybe like a Caviar Green kind of drive, it might be able to do. That's still a bit of a stretch, but you know, any 2.5-inch you might.
Is there any like logic in this adapter?
It's straight wires.
Okay, so is that even possible under USB then? It's not.
What do you mean?
Like, you couldn't go SATA and SATA power to USB 3 and without there being some kind of logic?
Right. And so this is just using the native eSATA protocol right off your motherboard, and it goes straight to the drive as if it was plugged in. Directly.
So this is why essentially we don't have the USB 3 ones that are like cheap, easy cable-based adapters.
Yeah, they won't be cheap because there has to be a USB 3 bridge in there, and it has to bridge to SATA.
Gotcha. Okay.
And not only that, but most of those from what I've seen, only bridge to 3 gigabit SATA. So you're still not going to get the full, 6 gigabit / whatever the max theoretical of the USB 3 is. So this is a good way to get that better speed. Just keep in mind that a lot of those motherboards, if the cable was any kind of length at all, even a few inches, they might have a hard time going faster than Serial ATA 1.0, which is 1.5 gigabits. So you might not get Serial ATA 3 gigabit speed even. Just sort of a warning. But
hey, 1.5G back in 2003 for me was more than good enough.
It still is pretty good, especially if it's just an external drive you're just trying to move some data to and from and stuff like that.
Data is the guy you go home to at night. Data is what you're talking about.
No, he was on that show.
Yeah, it was Star Trek.
Oh, God. All right, that is going to wrap up the show for us this week. If you want to send us an email, we didn't get to any this week. Again, we apologize. We kind of had our schedules kind of turned around and upside down this week, but we'll figure that out. 1-888-38-PC-PER is a toll-free telephone number, and the email address is podcast@pcper.com. Now, of course, we encourage everybody to go to our website, pcper.com. You can go to pcper.com/podcast. You can see that up here in our tabs: home, reviews, news, forums, podcast. Click on podcast, and boom, this is where you go to send all of your friends to learn about the PC Perspective podcast and all of its awesomeness.
Or learn about other stuff.
Just go to pcper.com, man. It's a great website. Some people I know told me about it. It's got reviews. If you want to learn about Rage Performance, Battlefield 3 System Guide, OCZZ Drive R4. How about NVIDIA revealing the 5th core on the Kal-El SoC CPU?
Or how about Katie Holmes being pregnant again?
Yeah, that's definitely on the front page. Jeremy reports on that crap all the time.
On who?
Yeah, we went as far as we could with it. So that's going to wrap up the show this week. We thank everybody for listening and dealing with our different audio and video configuration. We will see you next week. Hopefully I'll see some of you out in Alameda, California for my workshop. But with that, I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
And I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Al Malventano.
Thanks for listening, everybody.